Vlog Friday. I want to play one of the McCullough Girls theme songs that they sent me, so let me get that.
Give me a V. Give me an L. Give me an O. Give me a G. Vlog Friday!
Those girls are so precious. There's one more, so I think we should probably vote on them. I don't know if you remember, I didn't do one last week because it was too heavy. What I was talking about was going to be too heavy. But I do appreciate the McCullough sisters for giving me wonderful theme songs to choose from. Vlog Friday. Whoo! It's almost 5 o'clock. But I thought I'm doing a Vlog Friday no matter what. I'm tired. It's been a long week. I think you can all relate to that. But I got a little story for you. Oh, a story on Vlog Friday. Yeah, it's a story for you. Okay. Daryl says I make too many assumptions that people know my story. So I always start in on, you remember when, and you may not know. But anyway, back in 1986, right after Chernobyl, I flew from Helsinki, Finland to China because I used to live in China. I just can't pretend that you guys don't know these stories. So anyway, I went back to teach in my university that I had been teaching at from 1983. And I went back there just to teach a quick 6-week graduate course in academic writing. So I flew from Helsinki to Beijing, then took the train up to my school, and I taught there. And it was a good experience, and, I'm grateful for them. So then it was time to leave, and I wanted to ride the Trans Siberian Railroad from Beijing to Helsinki. Actually, it only goes to Moscow, but, I'd keep going by train, just different train. So my plan was to go to Beijing, get a ticket on the Trans Siberian Railroad, ride the train from Beijing to Moscow, praying over the nations, asking God to break down communism, break down Marxism, break down tyranny, crush the Soviet Union, and let people be free. And I prayed that for China as well. So my teaching, my 6 weeks course was finished, and my friend Jamie, who's the best teammate in the whole world, she was staying for the summer. And so we said goodbye in Changchun. And I said, now, I'm not 100% sure because I want to be on the Chinese. There's 2 trains that leave out of Beijing. There's the Chinese train and the Russian. And I want to be on the Chinese train because oddly enough, this is 1986, oddly enough, everyone said that the Chinese train was cleaner than the Russian. Well, I can't imagine because Chinese train be dirty back then. So I told Jamie, I said, I don't know how it's going to work. If I get on the Chinese train, it goes through Changchun. So I'll give you a holler, I'll call, find some way to communicate with you and let you know if I'm on the Chinese train because maybe you could come to the station and we could say hi to each other one more time before I head on into the Soviet Union. So that was our plan. So I get down to Beijing, and my university, Changchun Geological College, had a sistership or close relationship with the Agricultural University in Beijing, which was just on the outskirts of Beijing. And they let me stay there for free. Somebody had called somebody and made arrangements. So I got to the Agriculture University and just was talking to people and explaining that I wanted to get a ticket for the Trans Siberian Railroad. And they said, well, if you go on the Chinese train, which everyone kept telling me was the cleanest, if you go on the Chinese train, it'd be a lot easier for you to buy tickets. You can use renminbi and you can use your teacher's card, your geological teacher's card. Yeah, people have that kind of photo ID wherever you go. Teacher's card to get a discount. They'll actually give you a cheaper price. So it was pretty well settled. And I found some nice people, some nice teachers at the Agriculture University who said, we can help you. And they drew maps and showed me how to get to the ticket office because it wasn't at the traditional train station. It was somewhere else. You had to go. So I went to the train ticket office for the Chinese Trans-Siberian and told them what I wanted. And they said, okay, before we can sell you the tickets, we'll give you a marker, we'll give you a receipt, but before we can actually sell you the ticket, you have to have a visa for Russia because the Chinese Trans Siberian train only goes China, Russia, where the Russian one goes through like Mongolia and Poland. You have to have a bunch of visas. But I only had to have one transit visa for Russia. So they told me where to go, and I found it. It was hard to find, but I finally found this Russian consulate or Soviet consulate out in the middle of nowhere. I finally found it, and I go in, and I'm thinking I'm there early in the morning. It's like 9:30. I'm thinking, oh, I'm going to be first in line. I don't know what I was thinking. So I go in, and it's just packed. It's packed with like hundreds of people. And most of them Mongolian, who are trying to get on this train because they want to go into Russia to do trade and, I don't know, see family members. I don't know. So I'm looking around and I'm like, I am never going to get out of here, ever. And you have to take a number. So I took my number and it was like 2,333,000. I mean, it was like giant number. And I was going, I'm going to be here all day and probably not get a visa. So I'm sitting there. And I got there about 9:30. And by 4 o'clock, I realized I think they close at 5. And I'd just been sitting there. And, back then we didn't have screens. I couldn't play with my phone. There was no, I didn't have a phone, cell phone. There's no tablet. Let me just say, you have a book to read. You can stare at people. You can write things. There's just really nothing to do when you're waiting, almost 8 hours in a visa office. So I'm just waiting and looking at people, and all of a sudden, now if you can imagine, it's this big room, and inside this room is this small fence. It's like 3 foot high, and that small fence has one of those flappy gates, and inside the fenced area are about, I would say, 8 to 10 desks, and at each of the desks was some kind of Soviet visa grantor. Male and female, young and old, but they were Soviet citizens working in China, and they were allotting visas to people waiting. But you couldn't go through that floppy gate. You couldn't go through that gate without one of them calling you and giving you permission. And usually they were calling numbers. And the Chinese were restless. Well, they weren't really Chinese. I think most of them were Mongolian. But they were really restless, and people were pushing. And I would thank God I had a seat, but nobody else had a seat. Okay, there were 30 chairs, and there were probably 150 people, so you do the math. So it was uncomfortable. It was hot. I hated every moment of sitting in that visa office waiting for the visa. So around 4 o'clock, I was like, I have just wasted a whole day, and so I'm going to have to come back tomorrow. That's all I could figure. And this woman stood up, who was probably about 40, 45 years old, Russian woman, stood up in that enclosed area. And she stood up, and in Russian, she calls out to me. Now, I didn't speak Russian then. I mean, I've studied Russian since, but I didn't speak Russian. And I'm looking at her, and I'm like, and I'm looking around, I'm like, is she talking to me? And she says something again. And all of the Mongolians and the people waiting are looking at me, and one guy says to me in Chinese, Zoba, Zoba. She's, go on. She's talking to you. So I stand up and kind of look around. You hear this kind of collective sigh. There's kind of like this groan in the room. So I get up and I walk over to the gate, the flappy gate, and I open the gate and I walk in. And she says something to me in Russian. And I go in English, I'm sorry, I don't speak Russian. And she goes, you don't speak Russian? And I go, no. And she goes, where are you from? And I go, I'm an American. And she started laughing, and she goes, an American? What are you doing here? And I said, well, I want to purchase a train ticket, the Chinese Trans Siberian, to go from Beijing into Moscow. And I need that transit visa before they'll send me the ticket. And she goes, oh, so you're American waiting here in Soviet consulate in Beijing, China, because you want to travel to Moscow. And I go, yeah, that's right. And she goes, what's your purpose of your journey? And I go, just to travel. I don't have any purpose. I do want to get to Helsinki. I have friends in Helsinki, so I'll go from Moscow to Helsinki, but mostly travel. Because I just didn't think it was a good thing to go, I feel God has called me to pray over the nation. And I want to be on the train praying over the nation. I don't know. I just didn't think that was probably the best thing to say. So she says to me, okay, I tell you something. You have one lucky day. I go, lucky? She goes, yes. You see these people? They drive us crazy. We cannot stand the Chinese people. And I go, wow, these aren't Chinese. I think they're Mongolian. Whatever. And she's like, and they push and they shove and they tell me, they make commands to me. It's so frustrating. So I see big blonde woman. I think, hey, she's probably Soviet. So that's why I called you over here. And I go, oh, I actually thought you were probably from Poland. I go, oh, okay. No, I'm not. So she starts talking to me and she says, we have big summer games. And that summer of 1986, the USSR was having their big summer games. And because of all of the difficulty with Chernobyl and how they weren't forthcoming with the poisoning of, the killing of thousands of people with the radiation, Reagan had banned the United States and said, we're boycotting the games. So there were no Americans going to go to the summer games in the Soviet Union. So she said, you might be only American. And I go, maybe. So she said, we have had a limit of how many, because of Chernobyl and the summer games, we've been limited on how many visas we can give. And she goes, and for the rest of the summer, this was like July 6, 7, something like that. And she goes, and for the rest of the summer, we cannot issue any more visas. And I said, well, that's interesting. And I'm thinking scary at the same time. And so she shouts something to her colleagues and they all start laughing. And all I can hear this, Russian language. And then I hear this Amerikansky. And then they all start cracking up laughing. And I'm going, yeah, I don't know what you just said. And so then she looks at me and she goes, you know what this is? And she holds up this piece of paper. And I go, no. And she goes, this is the last visa for the summer. And I go, oh. And she goes, and American girl, you're very lucky because I'm going to give it to you. And she filled out that visa. She stamped it and stapled it into my passport. And then all of the 10 other desks start putting their close sign, and you hear this horrible groan coming from the crowd. There's probably 150 people in there. And you hear this horrible groan coming from the crowd. And she gives me the passport, and the sign says, no more visas. In Chinese and Russian, no more visas. And I was dumbfounded. So dumbfounded. So she said, so hurry up and go get your ticket. I go, thank you, I will. So I got my visa and I cautiously walked out through the crowd, excuse me, sorry, walking through the crowd and get out on the street. And it still hasn't quite hit me that I got the final summer visa for 1986 for that consulate, right? For that train, for whatever, that was it. So I go to the train place. I get my ticket. It's not the train station. It's an office that sells tickets for the Trans Siberian China train. So I buy my ticket. I show my visa. I get everything organized. I've got all my paper stuff. I got everything ready. And the university where I'm staying, the agriculture university, let me call the Chongqing Geological College and tell Jamie the day and time that I would be coming through Chongqing because I was going to be on the train. So finally, 2 days later, it's time to get on the train. And I mean, it's like something from a movie. It's just so crowded. And the Chinese have allotted one particular car just for foreigners. They don't want the foreigners intermingling with the Chinese. And there was a large number of Russian soldiers that had gotten on there in Beijing too. They'd done some kind of training or something, and there was a big group of Russian soldiers that were getting on the train as well. So there was one car, and there were 14 foreigners in that car. 14. My compartment was for 4 people to sleep, and I had a married couple from Australia and me, and then we had empty bunk. That was really good. We needed that empty bunk. It's about a 12-day journey from Beijing. And then by the time you get to the border, the national border between China and Russia, they have to change the wheels on the train because the tracks in Russia and the tracks in China are two different sizes. So it takes about a whole day for them to change every wheel and put a different wheel on so that you could keep going. And it's a long trip, and there's no showers. It's not what people call soft seat. It's definitely not first class, but it was okay. It was all right. So when I got on, and there were these 14 foreigners, most of them from Britain, some Australia. There were some people but everybody spoke English, even though they weren't all American. There was a Canadian, there were the British people, there were some Australians. I think there was a guy from New Zealand, but they were all English speakers. And so when we got on and there were some guys from Denmark. And so when we got on the train, I just didn't talk. I just think when you travel like that by yourself, it's better just to play your cards close to your chest. And I just kept, I kind of kept to myself, kept my business to myself. And so we were traveling from Beijing to Chongqing, which is about a 17-hour train ride. And it was overnight. So the next morning, I knew that Jamie said she would be there at the train station. And so as we're pulling into Chongqing, everybody's hanging out of the windows. It's summertime, it's hot. Plus we're coming into a town. So we're all hanging out the window, and I'm looking, and I see Jamie, and she's being harassed by some Chinese officials, like train guards. They weren't soldiers, they weren't police, but they're just like train guards. And they were kind of harassing her, like they wanted to see her ticket, or they're asking her something. And so I'm looking out the windows, we're pulling into the station and getting ready to stop. And I start hollering out the window in Chinese, hey, don't bother her. She's with me, okay? 不给她太麻烦，这是我的苹果. That's my friend. And so I jumped down, get off of the train, because you can get off there. So I got off the train, and I ran to Jamie, and we hugged, and she'd made this huge bag of food. She had this like giant basket filled with all kinds of delicious foods for the train, because it's really hard to eat on the train and to find the dining car, and it's not always good, and it's kind of expensive. So she'd packed a couple of days meals for me, snacks and fun stuff. And we visited, and I had to scold the train guards for harassing her. Okay, so I just scolded them, and I told them that they should be embarrassed. They should be ashamed for harassing this nice young woman who just came to bring me some food. And, 不好意思, it's not polite, it's 不好意思, So I was trying to shame them. So Jamie and I talked, and we cried because we didn't know when we see each other again. I thanked her for the food, and it was a wonderful, time. And so then it was time to get back on the train. So I jumped back on the train, and I come back into the car of foreigners, and the 13 foreigners are standing in the hallway of the car, mouths wide open, staring at me. And they're going, what just happened? And I go, what do you mean? And they go, you speak Chinese? And I said, yeah, I speak Chinese. And that's my friend, and I used to teach here, and she brought some food. Do you guys want some food? And so we all just hung out together, and we ate food and talked. And, I tried to talk about my faith because none of them were believers, not any of them. And they were a motley crew, so to speak. They were a rough crew. And they were sweet. Everybody was kind. So one of the stops when we were changing the wheels, we picked up a woman who was half Chinese, half Russian. And she was really sweet, and she was getting ready to get married. She was young. She was probably 20, 21. And her mother was Chinese, her father was Russian, and before she got married, her mother and dad wanted her to go to China and see her grandparents for the first time. Like I said, she's 20, 21 years old. And so she had traveled alone to China, met her grandparents, told them about the marriage, and they had given her 6 bags filled with like dowry and clothing and silk and I just can't imagine all the stuff. Cookware. They wanted to bless her, and they wanted to give her their blessing for, her marriage. And they'd never met her, so they were sending stuff back for her mom. And it was 6 huge bundles of stuff. They were tied up in rope. Well, when we picked her up at the border, it was just north of Harbin, which is right at the border between Russia and China. And when we picked her up, she couldn't get all of her things on the train by herself, so her Chinese family helped her carry all the stuff on the train and get her situated, and she was in the compartment just next to mine. And so everybody was like, hey, go ask her what she's doing, because we were all interested in it. It's interesting to see someone get on the train with 6 huge bundles. And one of her bundles had to go in my compartment because I didn't have any luggage. And so we were all trying to tuck her stuff away so it could be out of the way. So I would go over, and the foreigners, all of the English-speaking foreigners, most of them European, would give me a question, and I'd ask her in Chinese, and then she'd answer the question, and then I would tell them whatever it was that they were asking. And she could also speak Russian, so that worked out really well, because if we needed to speak to the Russian trained people, they would say English to me, I would speak Chinese to her, she would speak Russian to them, and that way we could all communicate. Well, after several days on the train, and I felt she was probably my favorite person on the whole train. She was adorable and beautiful Eurasian, right? Russian dad, Chinese mom. She was beautiful. And we had a lot to talk about. We talked about China. How'd she feel there? Did she feel different? You know, we had good conversation. So finally we pull into her town, and it is about midnight. Now it's July, so the sun doesn't set. There's always some sunshine in Siberia during the summertime, but still, I think the streets are pretty dangerous, and I don't know the town. So when we pulled into this city, I asked the train conductor, one of the main guys that kept walking up and down our car to make sure we were safe and doing everything we were supposed to do. I said to him, she's got to get to the bus stop, and she's got 6 bundles. And he goes, what are you saying to me? You know, and I go, well, now this is awkward because I'm saying it in Chinese to one of the Chinese workers, and he's saying it to Russian in Russian. And then the captain of the car, the train guy, we don't have train language in American English. Do you notice that? He's not the conductor, but he's kind of like the steward of a car. And he would say back from Russian to Chinese, and then the Chinese guy would say it to me in English. That's how we communicate. I said, I'm worried about her. She's got these 6 bundles. She's got to catch a bus to her parents' house. And if she leaves, like carries 3 to the bus stop and leaves 3 here, they'll get stolen. And then if she leaves those there, they'll get stolen. You know, anything she does, it's going to get stolen. She can't carry all of these by herself. And the Russian steward goes, well, what do you propose? And I said, how about if you let me help her carry them? And he goes, you mean get off the train? And I go, look, I don't think it'll take that long. She said the bus isn't very far at the bus stop. So what I want to do is I want to help her carry the stuff to the bus stop, leave her there, and I'll run as fast as I can and get back on the train. And he goes, you know what'll happen if we take off without you? You don't have a visa. You'll be arrested. And I go, but you won't take off without me, would you? Would you take off without me? And he goes, we might. Depends on how fast you are. I said, do you think it'll take that long? And he goes, I don't know. I've never been in this city. And I go, okay. She says it's not very far. I think I can do it. Let me just get off the train. Don't leave without me. He goes, no promises. So I said, would you agree? And he goes, okay, I agree, but hurry, because if the train whistle blows and you're not on this train, I will leave you. But I didn't know if he really meant it. So I took 3 bundles. She took 3 bundles. And of course, all the foreigners now who have fallen in love with her because she's so precious are hollering out the windows. The windows are lowered, and they're hollering out the windows. Run! So I take my 3 bundles. She's got her 3 bundles. We haul it. We have to go under the street. So there's a kind of like a tunnel, or we call it a subway, but that's different in American English. But it's an underground. It's an underground sidewalk. And so I was going under the roadway, and so I'm under there with her, and it's really dark. Most of the lights are out, right? I mean, welcome to the Soviet Union. It's a third world country with a first world country military. So we're running under the cover, the tunnel, and I get her to the bus stop, and we hug and kiss, and I leave her all her goods there, and she's got everything she needs, and then I run as fast as I can to get back on the train. But just in an instant, I stopped in that tunnel. I was all by myself. I stopped in that dark tunnel, and I go, I claim this city for Jesus Christ. In the name of Jesus, I claim this city. And then I take off running, and I make it in plenty of time. I'm out of breath. And of course, all the foreigners, all the Europeans are shouting, run, run, as fast as you can. So I ran, I got on, and the Russian steward was looking at me. He was just shaking his head because he thinks I'm ridiculous anyway. So off we went. She was fine. And thank goodness for that. So eventually, I get off the train in Moscow. I finally get back to Helsinki. I come home. Life is blah, 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 blah. But in 1991, if you've been following my vlog, I started teaching in Moscow. And I taught in Moscow from 1991 to 1993. But raising support is hard. And my university didn't pay me a living wage. They couldn't. There was a great economic downturn in the Soviet Union after the fall of the Soviet Union. Russia was left with inflation, and the ruble just didn't go anywhere. A loaf of bread was practically my monthly salary. It was just a ridiculous inflation. So I had to raise money so I could pay my rent and have some food and, live. And it's exhausting. I don't know if you've ever done it, but raising support monthly, I was tired of it. And someone had said to me, hey, why don't you apply for a Fulbright scholarship, because they have money and they're always looking to place people in Russia. So I applied for a Fulbright scholarship. I went back to the United States, made the application. You have to apply in the U.S. So I was in the United States and I applied for the Fulbright scholarship, and I got it. Shockers are Rooney. I got the Fulbright scholarship. So we all everybody that is a Fulbright heads to Washington, D.C. for training. So they'd asked me actually to be a part of the training for the people going to Russia. So we were in training, and we knew the date that we were leaving, but we hadn't gotten our assignments. Nobody knew where they were going to be or what city or anything. The assignments were going to come about 48 hours before departure. So on the 48th hours before departure, we all got our cities. And I didn't recognize mine. It was called Yekaterinburg. And I knew a lot of the cities, like Leningrad had changed to St. Petersburg. And I knew that Yekaterinburg had another name, but I couldn't remember, I can't keep track of all the name changes. So I got on my plane. I flew to Moscow, took the train to Yekaterinburg. And when I arrived, there was that strange, odd deja vu feeling. And when I was walking through the train station, I realized it was Sverdlovsk. Sverdlovsk was the city where I had taken the girl off of the train and run through the tunnel and claimed it for Jesus Christ. Claimed that city for Jesus Christ. That's where Uncle Sam posted me for my Fulbright scholarship. The old Sverdlovsk, which is now Yekaterinburg, where the Tsar and Tsarina were killed during the Bolshevik Revolution. That may not seem like a big deal, and I guess you'd have to look at the geography of Russia and all the main cities that have some kind of university program. But for me, it was a really big deal. That in 1986, a city that I had claimed for the kingdom of God and for Jesus Christ was 8 years later the city where I was assigned to teach in 1994. I don't know. Kind of a big deal to me. The Trans Siberian Railroad has always been a great adventure for me. I've been on it twice. I went from Beijing to Helsinki, which is about a 12-day journey, and I also went from Helsinki to Beijing. Now, I had talked to a friend earlier this week about the deal about traveling alone. And I don't recommend anyone travel alone. And the Bible always sent people out in twos. Don't you think the New Testament was always sending them out in pairs? But I had a lot of times that people canceled on me at the last minute that was supposed to be my partner. And also, I always had an accountability group. So even though I was traveling alone, wherever I landed, whatever city, whatever town, whatever nation, wherever I landed, there was a body of believers there welcoming me and waiting for me. The traveling part and traveling alone is creepy. I don't like it. It would make me I still to this day get nauseous before getting on a plane. I just hate travel. But the thing of it is, I wasn't doing like ministry alone. I always made sure that I was partnering with a good group, a biblically founded group, and that I had accountability and that I was participating and not just some Lone Ranger crazy woman out there all alone, for whatever that's worth. Okay, this has been Vlog Friday with Terry McCarthy. Thank you so much for joining me. And Barbara Schnabel, your emails just bless me more than I can even say. You just touch my heart every time you write me. Thank you. Thank you for your prayers. Thank you guys for all the good emails and comments. I'm so grateful. I'm up to 104 subscribers. Oh my word. And grateful for every one of them. So I hope you have a great weekend. I hope that the Vlog Friday has ministered to you and maybe worked as a reminder that no matter where we are in the world, God knows where we are and we're never lost to him on his radar screen. All right. Love you. Have a great weekend, and I'll see you next week for Vlog Friday.